This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.
Before we get started on this article, I urge you all to read the multi-part feature, Whither, Samus, Aran, in which Greg Leahy, Johnny Metz, and myself brainstormed where Nintendo could take the Metroid series in some hypothetical future game. Interestingly, this feature was published a week before the E3 2009 announcement of Metroid Other M. Watching that trailer made me think that Nintendo was going to explore Samus's time in the Galactic Federation. Alas, that really wasn't the case. My opinions on the franchise have matured somewhat in the 12 years, good lord, since Whither Now Samus Aran was published, and here they are. I still think there are primarily three avenues for Metroid stories following the events of Metroid Fusion, which remains the latest game in the series, canonically speaking. Young Samus. Samus Aran was raised by the Chozo after her family was slaughtered by Ridley, as accounted in the Metroid E manga. While there has been some suggestion that the manga is not canonical, many of the Zero Mission bonus images are taken right from that source, so I would consider it the basis for Samus's childhood. There is an 11-year gap between Samus being infused with Chozo blood or DNA and acquiring the power suit, and that time period could see a traditional 2D Metroid game focusing on exploration and light combat. Perhaps her power suit could be slowly acquired over the course of the game piece by piece, and that would constitute her movement upgrades. The story possibilities here are intriguing. Samus apparently trained with a young male Chozo warrior. He could be a second playable character, with character switching similar to that of Castlevania Portrait of Ruin. Although the game would necessarily take place on Zebes, it could focus on the Chozo city that would later fall to ruin, and the surface of the planet, much of which we've never really seen before. We might see the creation of Mother Brain, as well as Samus's decision to leave the Chozo and enroll in the Galactic Federation. We could see her first encounter with the space pirates. Metroids would not themselves make an appearance unless somebody brought them over from planet SR-388, where they were manufactured, also by the Chozo. One other thing, and maybe this should be saved for another game, some clarification on exactly what the space pirates are. Throughout the series, space pirates have appeared in a variety of distinct forms. I wonder if the space pirate moniker is a bit like Halo's Covenant, a coalition of different aliens working together. Likewise, the pirate homeworld of Metroid Prime 3, Corruption, simply a major base of operations, or is it where one or more of these entities originated? Young adult Samus. At a certain point, Samus leaves the Chozo behind to pursue a life in the Galactic Federation military. I suspect she was motivated by a desire to take revenge on the pirates, and Ridley in particular, for the death of her parents. It's a little unclear whether she had her power suit during this time. The flashbacks in Other M are frustratingly silent regarding any time spent in combat situations. Certainly these games could default to traditional Metroid gameplay, perhaps with an aesthetic and scenario similar to Chair Entertainment's Shadow Complex, where Samus infiltrates enemy facilities to gain intel on various space pirate targets. The game could be structured like Metroid Prime 3 or Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, where the action is broken up into distinct maps, each growing larger as her abilities improve. Like her early years, this stage of Samus's life also presents interesting story possibilities. We would see the pirates either steal or reverse engineer Mother Brain from the Chozo, steal Metroids from SR-388, and start using or engineering them for nefarious purposes. We would see the extinction of the Chozo on Zebes, SR-388, and Talon 4, and the destruction of their civilization. The plot would necessarily get into Samus's testy relationship with Adam Malkovich, her commanding officer, and her decision to eventually leave the Galactic Federation. She would return home to the ruins of Zebes to find her power suit, the only connection she has left to her adopted people, and swear, on Grabthar's hammer, to avenge them. Post-Fusion Samus. At the beginning of Metroid Fusion, Samus is infected by a parasitic organism called X, Lord, which threatens to take over her nervous system. Scientists find a miraculous cure, injecting Samus with a vaccine infused with Metroid DNA. The Chozo apparently created the Metroids to deal with the X-parasites on SR-388, but the energy vampires quickly got out of control, leading to the Chozo abandoning SR-388 and sealing off its subterranean ecosystem. Unfortunately, once Samus later traveled to SR-388 under contract by the Galactic Federation to kill all the remaining Metroids in Samus 2, Return of Samus Returns, the X-parasites overran the planet and later a Galactic Federation space station, I've always felt that Metroid Fusion dealt with Samus's new physiology in the laziest way possible. Free-floating X-parasites simply became health and missile refills. Additionally, the biomechanics of her power suit became overly complicated. In previous games, Samus could simply turn the power suit on or off, and it would materialize or dematerialize seemingly at will, like Iron Man's suit in Avengers Endgame. Of course, that never made a lick of sense, but in Metroid Fusion, Federation scientists must surgically remove her power suit, which is then infected by X-parasites. Samus is left not with her Zero suit, but with a weird secondary skin-tight suit with Batman blades on her free arm. She retains her arm cannon and helmet, which is strange because the X-infected doppelganger also has an arm cannon and helmet. Be that as it may, Samus is left with an intolerance of extremely cold environments and freezing X-parasites and nothing else. I would think she'd have an existential crisis, knowing she's been injected with the very space blobs she's been fighting against her entire life. At the end of that game, Samus defeats her doppelganger and reabsorbs the X-parasite that took over her armor, but this probably didn't cure her Metroid physiology. A game set in a post-fusion story could focus on the growing influence of Samus's Metroid DNA on her own body. Perhaps she develops new powers, like levitation, or vampire-like compulsion to suck the life energy out of other life forms. Perhaps her Metroid DNA eventually comes into conflict with her Chozo DNA, or her power suit no longer recognizes her. She could search the galaxy for a cure to her deteriorating condition. The game might also feature Sylux as a villain. Sylux is a character in Metroid Prime Hunters who is seen following Samus after that game's finale. He also appeared to be following her after Metroid Prime 3, and he broke into a space pirate facility to steal a Metroid at the end of Metroid Prime Federation Force. It's more likely, though, that Sylux will be more fully explored in Metroid Prime 4, which will probably be set between Metroid Prime 3 and Metroid 2, because God forbid we continue Samus' story beyond Fusion. So there you have it. 3 ideas for the future of the Metroid series. Do any of them strike your fancy? Do you have any pet theories or suggestions? Let us know.
This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.